If you're into self-development, music is the perfect art form. And I say this as a musician myself. I've been playing for almost 20 years, and music has always been a great part of my life, ever since I was a little kid. The first memories I have of my dad are of him listening to music, especially rock and roll. Also, my grandmother on my mother's side, she was an artist herself. She was, if you think of it today, you can say she was quite a polymath because she was an arts teacher. She was a lawyer, which at the time was a pretty lofty thing. She also was a pianist. She really did go to school, and she had, I'm not sure if it was a diploma, but there was this kind of musical school that they call here a conservatorium, and she did it. She completed it. She could be a professional musician if she wanted to. And she was also, like I said, she was an art teacher for painting. She taught me how to paint. But this is not about my grandma. This is about music and how it's a perfect art form. And I have this triangle over here, or this pyramid, if you will, to show you what I consider the three pillars of art, of any art form. So the number one would be about introspection. Any art form demands that the artist introspect and get into themselves, get that, be it a divine inspiration, whatever it is, but they need to introspect to access that kind of thing. So any art form, be it painting, be it sculpting, be it writing, be it music, demands a bunch of hours, countless hours alone, introspecting, receiving, and really feeling that art. Second pillar would be self expression. So, self expression is the result of that introspection. First, you introspect, and then you express yourself. You get your deeper feelings, your deeper thoughts, everything that's deep in your heart and your soul, and you self express it so that other people can feel it as well. And finally, what I put here is energy transmission. And what I call energy transmission is in terms of, think about this. When you see a painting or a sculpture or maybe a nice building, an architecture kind of thing, can be art as well. Most of the time, you won't feel that energy transmission so easily like we do with music. With music, it's really easy. Your friend who doesn't even know how to play really well, but he knows three or four chords, he can start playing Oasis and everyone will sing Wonderwall with him and have a great time. Music has that thing, that very guttural thing that comes from deep within our bowels. And it's no wonder as well that music is used to make us feel a certain way in a movie. So you've probably seen these things as well. They can put a scene, for instance, of someone making an omelet on a movie, and if they put one of those kinds of music that we're used to listening to in a horror film, you'll think that they're preparing to end someone's life. But if they put a happy song, you'll think, oh, it's the wife preparing an omelet for her husband or something like that. So music has this very deep connection to how we feel. And of course, if you go to Italy and you see Michelangelo's David, for instance, there's no way that you won't be moved. And this being moved, this feeling something very deep, is what I mean by energy transmission. But there are very few and far between, and for most people, you need to really learn how to be able to appreciate that kind of art because it's an acquired taste. It's like wine tasting or something. But with music, anyone can appreciate music. It's pretty easy, and musicians have gone to great lengths to show how easy it can be. Because you had punk rock, which was basically power chords. Basically, like for instance, a Blitzkrieg Bop would be like so just three chords, so easy to play. Like any child can play that kind of song, pretty much. And you don't need to overcomplicate things to transmit that energy. But, anyways, this is actually about self development, not about music itself, but how it's a great tool for self development. And why I'm very fortunate. I think I was very fortunate to start learning music when I was a kid, and how this influenced my life. And I was even talking to one of my best friends who used to be the bass player on my first band, my first actual real band. And we were brainstorming and thinking about things like how our lives changed due to music. So I guess the first thing, and why I recommend learning an instrument to anyone, and my kids definitely will have to pick up some kind of instrument. The first thing is discipline. And I think it's quite obvious why you need to be disciplined, or you need to develop your discipline when you want to become a musician. Because okay, you might go to your first class, your first guitar class, and then he'll teach you the basic chords. So he'll teach you the G, then he'll teach you the D, the C, the A, the E, and they probably won't teach you the B or the F because they have you have to put your whole finger in. In the beginning, it just doesn't make sense to make people do that. It's hard in the beginning. You have to train your hand and shape it in the right way. But anyways, once you know these three chords, it's pretty easy to play pretty much any pop song. Like most of the songs use these chords anyway. But if you really want to play, if you really want to become good, first of all, you have to have enough discipline to train or practice until you know all of those chords by heart. So if your teacher wants to teach you a song and he's like, play the D, and you're like, now the A, and you're like, what's the A again? Is this one? Is this one? I'm not sure. So you need to have a little discipline so you learn. So next week when you go back to your class, it'll be like D and then A, D, no, G. I used to love her, but I had to kill her. Who likes Guns N' Roses? And of course, I had lost my pick, had to pick it up. So of course, it'll get progressively harder and harder, and you'll need the discipline to learn some exercises. For instance, an exercise that teachers teach you so that you can warm up would be something like, and then you'll go up and do it for the whole neck of the guitar. And of course, especially when you're starting out, especially if you're starting out as a kid or as a teenager, you might get a little bored and you're like, oh, but I want to play. I just want to be like, smells like Teen Spirit. But you need to exercise this discipline because you'll never become a good player if you don't learn how to spend 15 minutes, half an hour a day doing scales or whatever, or maybe you're trying to improve your hammer on, so you're like, or maybe you want to do something else. Maybe you're, yeah, like just a basic scale, like, and you can see that I haven't played in a while actually, so I'm not as good as I should be, and especially if you consider how long I've been playing in my life, I'm not as good as I should be, but I'm good at that. Anyways, another thing that's very important. So thing number two, and going back to the exercises and scales and the more technical aspects, and even if you think about musical theory as well, space repetition. So, for those of you who don't know, space repetition is about you practice a little bit of something now, and then after half an hour, you may practice a little bit more, and then tomorrow you practice again and again and again. And in the beginning, you'll be you'll forget most of the things, and that's normal. And you can use spaced repetition with anything, really. Anything that you want to really learn, anything that you need to know by heart. So many students of languages or medicine students, law students use spaced repetition. And you can use index cards, you can use a bunch of things, the Anki app. But with music, it can be simply, well, maybe I need to learn the chords if you're beginning. So you might practice a little bit today, a little bit tomorrow, a little bit the day after that. And by doing this, slowly but surely, you're creating the neural pathways in your brain. And dare I say, the muscle memory, that would be pretty much the neural pathways between your mind and hand, your brain and hand connection, or hand-eye connect coordination. So by doing the space repetition, which is helpful in a bunch of other scenarios, not only in music, you can become a better student, you can become a better, well, employee, professional, whatever. The third thing that's very important about music and why it's such a good tool for self-development is the compounding effects. Because it's very easy. One thing about this is that you have instant feedback. So you'll know when you screw things up. So maybe you're trying to play whatever song, like maybe, yeah, like let's say Day Tripper. So it should be, but say that you somehow screw it up and you do something like, so you didn't do it right, but you have the chance just 1 second later to do it again, and then you will do it right, and then you'll be like, and of course, when you're first learning a song, you'll make mistakes. It's normal. It's the thing. You're learning. When you're learning something, you're supposed to make mistakes because that's how you know where you can go, where you can't go. It's all about getting out of your comfort zone. Like it or not, if you want to get good at anything, you'll need to go towards your comfort zone and take a step further than that, and then take another step and another step and another step. And it's about the compounding effects. So so you first start learning this, and then you might be able to play a pentatonic, and then you might be able to, maybe you want to practice some bands, and then you put it all together, and you have something like, I bet you look good on the dance floor. The introduction solo, which is like, which is basically pentatonic with bending, maybe a bit of hammer on. Not sure. I was kind of thinking more about what I was going to say next than about the playing itself. So you see that I kind of made a bunch of mistakes. But anyways, it's also very I mean, of course, you never want to commit any mistakes, but like Forrest Gump says, shit happens. So that's the thing. That's another effect that I didn't even think about before starting to record this video, but that's another thing that you can help by learning to play because you know that things can happen and things can get out of control. Maybe you're in the middle of a song doing that solo and a chord simply explodes, a string simply explodes, and you don't have the string in the middle of the song. That happens. If you try to play live, that kind of thing happens all the time. That's why the professionals, the big rock stars of the world, the Slashes of the world, the Kirk Hammonds of the world, those guys have their roadies. They have a dozen guitars ready to go at any given time, and of course they have two or three guitars that are their favorites. But they always also have a bunch of things, a bunch of instruments that are ready to go if something happens. After that, fourth one, and maybe we could put fourth and fifth together because fourth would be teamwork and the fifth one would be leadership. And if you imagine, especially when you begin playing, usually it's all boys who are teenagers. So you have a bunch of problems already in that equation, right? So you have four or five boys in their 13 to 18 range, and all of them, there's a reason why they started playing. Like, of course, they probably love music and they like to play and they like that self expression thing. But at the end of the day, we know why they're playing. At the end of the day, it's because they want to get girls, man. They might have not began thinking about that because you might begin playing at 7 or 10 years old and you don't really care about girls anyway. But when you're 15, that's definitely something that's in the equation. So you get these drama queens, these little rock stars in the making, full of hormones. There's a bunch of drama involved in a teenage band. So you end up developing a lot of teamwork and leadership skills because you have to deal with a bunch of egos. So maybe there's one guy who always learns all of the songs that you guys said you should learn for that week, and there's one guy who never learns any song. So those guys are definitely going to clash. There are a bunch of things that can happen. Fights because of girls, fights because of whatever reason, fights because you ate one piece, yeah, one piece of pizza too much, and that should be mine. That kind of thing happens all the time. But on the other hand, you end up learning how to deal with those things, and that's very good growing up because when you have to deal with something at work or some other kind of situation, you already know how to deal with much more extreme things because teenage or the fluorescent adolescent type of little rock star in the making, they are quite the drama queens. I was one. I had friends who were, and of course, some of those guys are still amongst my best friends till this day. But there were times that weren't as easy. But that's a good thing as well because you end up gelling so much with that group because you're seeing them every week or at least every other week. You have to go to someone's house and play, and you're there at least for the whole afternoon, sometimes more. And you end up really gelling with those guys. You'll play for a couple hours and then you'll stop to eat something and then you'll play again. And it's a lot of fun. Well, the next thing that music is a great tool of self development for is about exposure. Because, especially for people who are more on the introverted side, who are more kind of afraid of putting themselves out there, of self-expressing in front of other people. When you are in a band, there's no way that you can't expose yourself. So in this band that I talked about before, I was a singer. So I was the rhythm guitarist and the singer. And for most time, like in the beginning and for a long time, I didn't even have a microphone or an amplifier for my voice. So it was pretty much screaming, even though I was introverted, perhaps a little shy at the time. So you have that instinct to keep your voice inside when you're like that. But at the same time, if you don't put yourself out there, people won't be able to listen to you because all of the. And imagine this with a drum set, imagine this with electric guitars, and you get the picture. So you really have to put yourself out there, and you're bound to have other people watching because maybe you're in someone else's house and their mom or your dad or your sister comes by and watches you guys playing for a while. And if you guys are serious about it, you'll end up wanting to do a show or two. And then you have dozens of people that you don't know watching. So you really need to expose yourself. And there's no option of like, oh, I'm too shy. I can't. Like, you can't do that, especially because, like I said, the drama thing, you don't want your friends to think that you're a pussy. You want them to think that you're awesome. So you'll play it, even if you are feeling a bit shy at the time, and you might end up fucking it up because you're simply, it happens. It's a very mental thing, especially singing. I never had much of a problem playing. So playing, just playing was pretty easy in terms of feeling judged or feeling, yeah, feeling self-conscious about my playing because most people don't play anyway. But singing, we kind of have this feeling or we think that everyone can sing, anyone can sing, which is definitely not true. So it's easier for people to judge you for your singing, or at least that was how I thought at the time. Well, the last thing that I put in this list, which would be the seventh, is about self esteem. So once you conquer all of these steps, so you're conquering because first you don't know what's the C chord. You have no idea that the C chord is this, or an E, or an E minor. But now you conquered. You know the notation, you know the language, so you already get a little confidence boost from that. And then you start doing the spaced repetition thing, and maybe you learn some scale, and you see the compounding effect. So also your self-esteem gets a little better because now you say, well, I can play. Like, you start from here and now you're here. So you already had a pretty decent evolution. And then maybe you'll get a band and you'll make some new friends. You'll gel with them. They'll become your gang of brothers. So that will also help you with your feelings of being part of a group, having people that you can count on. And by conquering that exposure factor, by going out there and putting yourself out there, that's when you'll feel that self esteem. And back to the girl thing, of course, if you're a 15-year-old boy and you start playing in the front of a crowd, it's bound that some of the girls will look at you differently than they would otherwise, especially if you're a bit shy. So, for anyone that wants to develop themselves, I'd say that art is a great path to do this because of having to deal with introspection, so your feelings, your deepest thoughts, your purpose, a bunch of things that are deep inside, your feelings of rejection, whatever it is. And then also with self-expression, expressing all of those things that are deep inside, putting them out there, and the energy transmission thing as well. So music is the one that encompasses all three, and it's super easy to begin. It's super easy to start playing, and I really recommend, because for me, I've been playing for 2 decades already, and I've met a bunch of people, and my best friends, all of them play. So you'll get that. And I can't imagine my life without music, as I can't imagine also my life without writing or without some of the other things that I do today. So without having a newsletter or a podcast or a bunch of things that I do and have. But if it wasn't for music, we wouldn't be here. And just so we finish on a high note, this was the first song that I learned. I'm not gonna play the whole song, and it was taught to me by a neighbor of mine at the time, Lucas. So if you're watching, thanks, man. And see if you recognize it. But it's from 2004. It's a very famous song. Oh shit. Summer has come and passed. The innocent can never last. Wake me up when September. So yeah, wake me up when September ends. That was the first song that I learned how to play, and after that, this guy taught me some of the things when I was beginning. But at the end of the day, I did do a little bit of guitar classes, but at the end of the day, I'm basically self-taught through the internet. And at that time, we didn't even have so many possibilities with videos, and YouTube was a pretty pedestrian thing at the time, and the internet was pretty pedestrian. Like the bandwidths were terrible and all that. But if it wasn't for this song, and if it wasn't for that first getting over the hump, I probably wouldn't be here, and I would be a totally different person, which is pretty funny or pretty interesting to think about. So I hope that this class about music and playing a little bit and how music can help you with your self development actually helped. And I hope that at least one of you guys will play and pick up an instrument and play. And I'd love to play with you guys live one day. That would be so cool, so awesome. So thank you so much for watching. And of course, follow, subscribe, send me a DM on X, all of that. Keep rocking, keep rolling, or better yet, start rocking and rolling, because you'll become an artist now.